Hi guys, so today's lesson is what is a function. So the first thing I'm going to need you to do, there are two before you get started taking notes. Pause this, put the CLO from Schoology into your student understanding log and write that down before you forget, because that's going to be our objective for what we're going to learn and practice today. Secondly, put what is a function definition into your table of contents. And some of you saw how helpful that was the other day when we were filling out our personal study plans. Okay, so pause and do that really quickly. I'm going to keep moving on. The definition of a function is a relation where every element in the domain is paired with exactly one element in the range. And we went over those key words in our do now. Relation, right? Domain, and range. And our domain represents our x values, our range represents our y values in a coordinate system, and the relationship is just the set of those two things. Okay? So the first way we can look at it as a set, as I've drawn here with the two circles, which you've also seen in the warm-up. I will also say that a function is a specific type of relationship. Like a square is a type of rectangle. Okay? A function is a type of relation or relationship between two variables, x and y. And you have the domain, which represents the x, and the range, which represents the y. And also the domain, the x values, are what we call the input values. And the y values are the output values. So when we say that a function is a relationship where every x, I'll say x instead of domain, is paired with exactly one y, okay, that's kind of thinking of it as a machine, maybe even a vending machine, where our input is $1, right? If we think of it as a vending machine. If we put in $1, machine, if we put in $1 and everything in the vending machine is $1, if we put in $1, we're only going to get one thing back, unless it's broken, which you've probably seen. But for every dollar you put in, you're only going to get one thing back. Now, you could buy two things by using $2, and that's fine. But each time you put it in, you're only going to be able to get one thing out. So let's look at it like this. If my input is 1, and then my output is -2, okay? Oops, I got rid of the negative there. Let's put the -2. What about if the second thing I buy, I could still buy that same thing, right? I could still buy Cheez-Its if I bought Cheez-Its the first time, and I can buy Cheez-Its the second time. That's fine. But with each time, I can only buy one of them, okay? What about the sixth time I put in $1? I'm going to get, well, I don't know, Harvest chips. And then how about this time? I'm going to get a Snickers, and this time I'm going to get, what's the best thing in there? Pop-Tarts, okay? So it's okay to get the same thing twice, but you can't get two things at one time, and that's basically what we're talking about with the function. So you're never going to have arrows going the other way from one number to the same number in the x value. And we'll have plenty of practice about this. So please feel free to ask me more. So we can also view this as coordinate points. Okay? And what does that look like? You probably remember from the warm-up, but our coordinate points are going to look like, remember our x values, our first x value was 1. If we put 1 in the input, our output was -2. Okay, let's see, if we input 2 into the machine, our output again is -2, and that's okay to have the same y value, but our x values, our inputs, have to be different, okay? And then our 6, if we input 6, our output is 3. If we input 7, our output is 4. And if we input 8, our output is 5. So we can also look at it as coordinate points. We can turn those coordinate points into a table, right? Where our input is our x, which is also our domain. We're going to try to look at things a bunch of different ways here, but we're really saying the same thing, right? It's like having the same contact, but you can look them up 3 different ways. You can look them up by their phone number, you can look them up by their email address, you can look them up by their name, but we're all going to find the same person in your contacts, right? It's just a few different ways of looking at it. And then on the other side is our output, which is our y values, which is our range. And a little trick, I remember domain is x and range is y. X comes before y and D comes before R. So that's how I remember how they match up there. So we just put our coordinate points, take them and put them in. If we input 1, our output is -2. If we input 2, our output is also -2. We bought Cheez-Its twice, that's fine. If we input 6, our output is 3. If we input 7, our output is 4. And if we input 8, our output is 5. Okay, so now we've seen it as a set, we've seen it as coordinate points, and we've seen it as a table. We can also, now let's switch. I'm going to switch sheets here because I want to start. You can stay on your same sheet. But I want a blank sheet because I want you to realize that the rule I'm about to write is not for these numbers. We're going to do an entirely different function. Okay, and the reason why I want to do that is because the next way we can look at a function is by using a rule. And a rule in math is an equation. So the rule I want to look at is, if we have a rule, okay, a rule is also an equation. If I say I have a function and the rule for that function is y equals 3x plus 4, cool, and then I can look at that, if it's an equation, I can also look at it as a table and as a graph, right? But before I get there, I want to show you something that we're going to be using from now on. And that's that instead of using y equals, when we're dealing with functions, and this will make sense, when we're dealing with functions, we're going to start using f of x equals 3x plus 4 in this case. And the reason why we use f of x is because what we're saying is the function of x is equal to 3x plus 4. So we use that, the function of x is equal to 3x plus 4. And that's the notation we use. When you see f of x, you know for a fact that it is a function. Okay? And it's really interesting, and I'll show you in just a second how that works with the rest of this. When it's easy to use because you know exactly what to put in for x, okay? So let's create a table from a rule. A table from rule, and this is going to be on your homework, so make sure you're paying attention to this. So we have our input, which is our x, which is also our domain, and we have our output, which is our y, which is our range. Remember, name, phone number, email address, just different ways to look at it. So let's input, let's start with -1. if we put in -1 into this rule. So what that means is you write this as f of -1 equals, and -1 is x, so 3 times -1 plus 4. So that's what I mean. That's why that x comes in really handy here, because that's where we're going to put what x is. So when you see that, like as a question, if it says find f of 3, what that means is wherever you see x, you're going to substitute in that number. This is f of -1, so wherever I see x, I'm going to substitute in -1. Now, you don't have to do any math for this. This is just telling you what you're doing or telling somebody else what they're doing. All we're going to do is the other side, is the output side. So, or the input side. I'm sorry, the output is the f of -1. So 3 times -1 is -3 plus 4. -3 plus 4 is +1. So if I input -1, my output is +1. Okay, so let's do it for 0. If I input 0, that means wherever there was an x, instead I'm going to substitute in 0. So 3 times 0 is just 0, plus 4 is +4. So if I input 0, my output is, if I input 0, that's what that means, f of 0, my output is just +4. Okay, so why don't you pause right now and see if you can fill out the rest of the table. If you input in 1, 2, and 3, can you tell me what comes out in the output, in the y and in the range? Okay, pause now. Thank you for coming back. Let's just double check and make sure we got the same answer. F of 1 is 3 times 1 plus 4, which is 7. If you input 2, you get 3 times 2 plus 4. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 4 is 10. And if you input 3, f of 3, you get 3 times 3 plus 4. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 4 is 13. And look, so it's going up by 3 because that's my slope right there, right? 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. And 10 plus 3 is 13. Okay, so you have created a table from a rule. Now, let's look at a graph. A graph. We can also look at a function as a graph. And let's do from a rule. Okay, and the easiest way to do this, you guys, we could graph it by hand, and that's fine. You just do your coordinates -1 to 1, 0 to 4. You get the idea. But you could also get out your handy-dandy calculator, and I've already done this one. Go to y equals, and the rule is, remember, f of x is the same as just y equals, so I put in 3x plus 4. Pause and do this at the same time, please. 3x plus 4 so that you're getting practice doing this. And then you can go to, I think I did zoom fit. I did zoom and then went down all the way down to zoom fit. Hit graph. There's the graph of that function. Okay. My y-intercept should be like 4. And it's a positive slope, right? So that's just kind of a sketch of the graph I did right there. And then you can also double check your table. Remember, second table, boom, there's the table that we just created. And you can go backwards. So -1 was 1, -2 would have been -2. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about for this lesson, and then I'm going to let you practice your practice problem under lesson, is the vertical line test. So how can you tell vertical line test I'm about to run out of time.